Hey guys, it's John from Town Planning Expert back with another video. And if you're liking these videos, please hit the like button, smash subscribe if you're new to the channel, and you'll get notified of any new videos that we bring forward. Don't forget, of course, you can request a video. You can request a subject be covered as part of the Anti-Guru series, and there we will cover off quite a lot of what we can cover off. Basically, we will deal with whatever your question is in a well-researched, well-rounded way, because this channel is not about hyperbole. It is simply about fact-checking and making sure that what we're saying is accurate. Now, today's question comes from Ian Knight. Ian Knight's an architect I know down on the south coast. Hi Ian, hope you're watching. And he asked the question, Section 106 viability assessments, how do you deal with them? How do you work with them? And happily, Ian, there is a massive great guide in the National Planning Policy guidance that helps us along. And that's where I've taken my point of principle here is the guide allows us to understand what the planners should be looking at, and moreover tells the planners what they should be looking at too. Now, suffice it to say, there are a number of different approaches to Section 106 viability. They should all stem from the guide, the standardised guide as to how you carry out one of these things. But different councils approach them in different ways. So some councils have a pro forma, some councils require a full report, some councils require a breakdown of all build costs. It's how you get to the end result. The recent one that we've just submitted with White Box up in Barrow was the full breakdown, and it was the full breakdown. So in terms of Section 106 viability, then there are a few steps to go through. The first thing to understand is what are the principles? Why do we do it? Now, we do it because things change. When plans are set for 5-year periods. If you're, for example, St Albans, your local plan was brought in 1998, and you're still running on a 1998 local plan, and you've just been told by the inspector your current local plan is rubbish. But things change over time. We've had multiple recessions since most local plans have been brought forward. We're about to hit another one, it looks like. And so the viability assessment that was carried out on the policy for Section 106 may very well have been done at a time where things were better or worse, or a whole different set of economic criteria were applied at that time. So viability assessments are allowed, and they should be carried out in line with government guidance that requires appropriate evidence informed by engagement with developers, landowners, infrastructure, affordable housing providers, etc. The whole point of them is they're transparent. They have to be transparent. So if you're required to provide financial information, you've got to provide that financial information. Gross development value is an important part of this. So in terms of when policies were set, they were set based on an aspiration of GDV. Right? The point to this is GDVs can go up and go down. They can go up in relation to house pricing indexes. They can go down massively in a recession, and we're starting to see the effect of that now in London, 17% down, and in the home counties, 10% down. So when doing applications in a recession, now's the perfect time to be doing these type of viability assessments, because you're on a down valuation at the moment. You're on a downward curve. They have to discuss all of the possible GDV options. So if you're going to rent, if you're going to sell, and take data from the surrounding area. Now, normally you end up getting a surveyor to give you a whole raft of data to throw into this assessment in order to make sure your GDVs are right. In terms of costs, you can use appropriate information. For example, you can use BCIS, the Building Cost Information Service. You need to build in abnormal costs, contaminated land, listed building, etc., and help that gain an understanding. You need site-specific infrastructure costs in there. Access roads, sustainable drainage systems, green infrastructure, anything that you're going to pay for that's going to affect the end value, affect the end profit. The cost of all relevant other policy requirements. Community infrastructure levy can impact upon Section 106 viability, especially if CIL is coming after the plan. That's all a part of benchmarking land value. Finance needs to be included, including any interest incurred through loans. Professional fees needs to be included, and contingency costs need to be included. The process does allow you to build in contingency. Land value always comes from existing use value. So existing use value is the value of the land as it currently stands without anything on it at all. So you wipe away any planning permission, you wipe away any planning gain, and you simply go on existing use value. When you're benchmarking that, it needs to be based on existing use value, a premium for the landowner, and reflect implications of abnormal costs. So if you've got that site-specific infrastructure and professional site fees, in order to carry out those surveys and get that value, that all gets built in. This, in theory, should all have been taken into account in the local plan preparation phase, but the council cannot predict everything. So when we're thinking about existing use value, that's the value right at the start. GDV is the value right at the end, and all your costs are built in the centre. Now, there are a number of different ways of calculating this, and the guidance provides really, really good benchmark. I'm just basically summarising as far as I can for a YouTube video. And again, we're not using any hyperbole here. We're not giving any false pretenses, false hope. Now, it is fair to say that once you've done all of this, you will come out with a figure, a percentage profit. Now, for the purposes of the viability assessment, the policy is abundantly clear. Plan making assumes 15 to 20% of gross development value as a suitable return for developers to establish viability of plan policy. So bank funding is based on minimum 20% GDV. So even the policy is outdated now with the guidance is outdated when compared to bank funding models. I always start with the bank funding model first. So I can't fund this site unless I'm making 20%. I simply can't make it work. It's not going to occur. It's dead, right? So once you've got to that assumption, 20%, and the lower assumption, 15%, is hard to get to. And actually that would be very, very difficult. You can choose different figures, but you have to demonstrate why. And it's easier to demonstrate the 20% for the bank funding model. So once you've demonstrated that 20%, then you run a sequence of scenarios. You run your numbers multiple times. And what you do is you are trying to demonstrate at what point does the contribution become viable. That's how you're actually structuring it. So it's multiple scenarios. If you paid 100% of the contribution, what's your profit return? 80% profit return, 60% profit return, and you keep going. It's a negotiation. You get to a point where your development becomes viable, okay, at the 20% marker. The council will never allow you, unless you're wholly unviable right from the start, and you cannot do affordable housing at all because it kills the deal. And in all honesty, if you're looking at a deal like that, then you either build it out for affordable housing and you get the affordable housing provider to do that for you, or you very much focus in on the possibility of dealing with it as 100% not affordable, 100% market, and you're basically running one scenario, which is it doesn't work at all if I have to pay for affordable housing and SIL and everything else. The important thing is you'll never get rid of everything. You'll either pay SIL or you'll pay affordable housing and SIL, but you'll never get rid of everything. And you have to factor that in. Now, once you've got all this together, you have to present it in the form of a document. A document has to be structured in the form of development, GDV, existing use value, build costs, here's how we got to our build costs. It has to be detailed enough for the council to understand. You have to have that level of transparency. All your assumptions have to be justified. Once your assumptions are well justified, and you get to that sequence of scenarios, you'll get to a conclusion, and the conclusion will be this development can pay for affordable housing at this rate, whatever that is. And the one we've just done in Barrow with White Box assumed that we could get to 25% affordable on site. We could not get to the required 35% affordable, so it was a down market. The one we've had commissioned in Reading took contribution from 50,000 to 15,000. Now, the important thing here is you could carry on going. You could carry on going and arguing, but the thing is, and the advice I always give at this point is you're then trading the cost of the development, so that the amount you're saving, for time, right? And in this market right now, you don't have time. You really, really don't have time. You've got a recession looming and the banks are not lending, very simply. So you don't have time to be messing around with multiple scenarios trying to zero it out. You're never really going to get to zero. You're always going to pay something. So what I would be saying is get to a point where you're happy, where you're content. With the White Box example, that was 25% on site. With their Reading example, it was a £15,000 contribution, a saving of 35 grand. You know, that's a big saving, and made that development viable again. But the point is, you're making the development viable, you're not zeroing out. If you try using that approach, making the development viable rather than trying for zero, then you'll get through this faster, and you'll get through it on a point of principle that actually we're able to do it, right? Whereas if you try and zero, and you repeatedly try and zero, the likelihood is the council is going to push back harder and harder and harder. Now, the final piece of advice on this, don't cheap out. It is very easy for a developer to cheap out and try and do this themselves. There are excellent Section 106 companies up and down the country that specialise in this, and this is a very special part of the planning process. You want a RIC surveyor to validate your answers. The reason why you want that is because the council will send your answers to a RIC surveyor with the express instruction to check your homework, to make sure what you're saying is truthful. You cannot lie on one of these. They are open and transparent. If you're found to have been false in your findings, then your viability assessment will be sent back with a load of red pen on it that says this was found to be incorrect, reassess. Right? And then you're just back to square one again. The final thing is you pay for them. So you will pay for the cost of the council sending that assessment out to a viability assessor, right? You only really want to be doing this once. You can't get away from that, all right? So I would be saying, don't cheapen out on this. Really focus in on what's important. The guidance is excellent because it actually really focuses in on how to do one of these and the sections that need to go in it. And that's reinforced by para 57 of the NPPF, which is very, very good and tells us how to do it. So I hope that helps. And that was a specific answer for Ian Knight. Ian requested it on the Property Expert community group on Facebook. If you want a question answered, then please put a question, John, please do a video in our community on Facebook, or comment on this video right now and say what you want me to cover next time on the Anti-Guru. As I said, this has been an Anti-Guru video. We've been telling you how to do it with no hyperbole. We've been telling you how it is with no exaggeration, and we've been doing it from the research. Okay, so like, subscribe, comment away, please. If you think I've got it wrong, tell me. If you think I'm right, lovely. I tend to be some of the time. And I'll catch you guys on the next Anti-Guru video. Have a great day.